Hello and welcome to my first Draw My Life video. This is going to be the first half of a two-part video where I talk about my life before leaving for California and while I was in California. The second half is going to be me talking about my future plans. So without further ado, let's go back in time. Back in April of 2018, I was living with my then girlfriend and I was working at a group home. Everything was going good. There wasn't really much that I could complain about besides just looking forward to the next vacation. I remember when I first got the job that I was going to make all this change and I was going to do my best to be such a positive turning point for the kids I was working for. The home life was good, the work life was good, and I was enrolled in school for my bachelor's in human services. I don't know when exactly it all happened, but things started to change for me. Things were slowly starting to just go wrong. My relationship with my girlfriend was slowly going south. I was struggling with school. I wasn't much of a believer in the work I did anymore, so I decided to quit my job. One thing I did know was that I needed to make a change. I just didn't know what. At the end of June, we had planned to fly to California and take a road trip while we were there, my ex, my cousin and I. About a week before flying out, I had this crazy, sort of like irresponsible idea to just not come back. I only had a few days to think about it, and if I did decide to go, I had to tie up all my loose ends. I mentioned the idea to my girlfriend, who seemed pretty nonchalant about it. I spoke to my cousin, and he was actually down to stay with me. So I spoke to his sister and my mom after that, telling them what we were planning to do. My mom was 1000% against the idea, but I think she knew that I was trying my best. The only thing I didn't get to do was talk to my father, but everything else lined up. 2 days before flying out, it was set in stone. My cousin and I were not coming back from California. We flew out on June 22nd, 2018, and were to arrive around midnight on June 23rd at San Francisco. This ended up being one of my most favorite memories ever. This was such an amazing road trip. To grossly oversimplify the trip, in a matter of 8 days, we drove about 2,400 miles. From San Francisco, we went to Yosemite Valley, then Sequoia National Forest, Death Valley National Park, through Vegas, to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. It looped all the way back to the Redwood Parks, way up in Northern California. We got back to San Francisco the day before the return flight and just hung around at the beaches in Chinatown before leaving. But when we were up in the Redwood Parks, my cousin told me that he changed his mind. He didn't want to stay in California and wanted to go back. I didn't persuade him because this was life-changing and I wanted him to make his own decision. So I just responded by telling him I was still staying. As much as I was enjoying the trip, being alone in California was now glooming over me. June 30th was the day we were scheduled to fly back. We dropped off the car rental and walked to the gate. I remember just a million I don't knows going through my head. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I don't know when I'll see everyone again. I don't know. I hugged them goodbye and wait for them to go through the gate, and I remember every bone in my body wanting to get in line with them. I didn't. They boarded the flight and I'm just hanging at the airport. I remember someone asked me if nothing was going right, would I come back? And I thought, what was it that I needed right? So I came up with a list. I gave myself 2 weeks to come up with 3 things: a car, a career, and a place to live. If I didn't have all 3 in 2 weeks' time, I was going to head back. All I have to do now is move, and I just told myself to keep moving no matter what. I picked up another car rental and just started driving. I went to the library for internet to look for a place to live and a career, and the gym to shower and work out a little bit. I tried Airbnb, but I figured it was just a waste of money since I was already paying for the car and was only in the Airbnb to sleep. I ended up sleeping most of my nights in the car. This went on for a little while and I was constantly turned down left and right. The first thing I found was an inkling for a career. I found a bootcamp for software engineering which offered free housing if you get accepted in the program. Problem was, I needed a place to stay during the bootcamp and some way to get there. I had a little bit of time before the bootcamp starts, but my time with the rental was running short. Luckily, I found a place in Fremont, California that I was able to move into on short notice for a few months. Just what I needed, and then I found a car after that. It was just another week until the bootcamp started. I beat the deadline and I can finally breathe. I went to a school called 42. There were no teachers and everything was project-based. Everything you need to know or learn, you were to ask your peers or find a similar solution online. This month was extremely rough and stressful. I had absolutely zero experience in computer science, never mind software engineering. About 2 weeks in, I felt defeated because I couldn't grasp any of the concepts at all. I called my girlfriend that night just to talk to someone, just to not feel alone. Something was off in the phone call, but I just chalked it up to our current situation. The next morning, I woke up to a call from her. She didn't want to continue the relationship anymore. I couldn't pull myself together to go to the boot camp for the rest of the month, but I showed up for the final exam and I failed miserably. And now I felt like I didn't have much left, and I felt like I didn't have a reason to go back. I struggled with trying to process everything so much that I ended up just putting my emotions to the side to deal with later. I was able to talk to someone at the bootcamp to help me with attempting the bootcamp again because I did actually start to catch on right before dropping out. I took it the second time and was studying upwards of 12 to 14 hours a day, and before you knew it, things were really starting to click. I made a couple of friends from the first and the second go who I'm still friends with today. The final was about 10 questions, and let's just say I passed 2 questions in 8 hours the first time around, and I passed 5 questions in 30 minutes this time around. I was absolutely impressed with myself in the progress I made in 2 months of rigorous study, and it was just enough to get me in. In September, I was able to move into the dorm and start my journey with 42. After the initial introductions into the program, we got right into work. If I was to compare what we did to construction workers, it was like the boot camp was learning how to lay a brick, and the projects now were like trying to build skyscrapers. The program only got harder the further you went in. I was in the lab anywhere between 8 to 10 hours a day, 7 days a week, and this was my life for the next year. I only came back to Mass twice my entire stay there. When I came back home the first time, I wasn't excited. One of my closest cousin's father passed away, so I really wanted to be there for him. During this week, I was going to be attending a funeral and moving my stuff out of my ex's place. Those were the original plans. But remember how I mentioned I didn't get to talk to my father before leaving? Truth is, I haven't spoken to him for over 10 years. I was trying to schedule a meeting with my cousin on my father's side for me to meet up with them and that side of the family. They actually got back to me when I was already in California, but I told them I was coming back for a week and they were able to fit me in their schedule, so now I'm gonna meet them too. I flew back as soon as possible to Mass to make the funeral, and as soon as I got back to my mom's house, I was hit with some bad news. A family member who I was lending my car out to did not tell me they had crashed a car, and I really needed the car to get around during that week. So now I'm looking at fixing a car, picking up a rental, going to a funeral, moving out of my exes, and meeting my father's family all in 1 week. I had no idea how I was going to make it work, and this may have been the most stressful week of my life. Coming home that week cost me thousands of dollars with a short notice flight, fixing the car, rental, and moving. I only remember eating twice that week, and that was when I was with my father's side of the family, who I'm so thankful for today for welcoming me with such open arms. But in the back of my head, I honestly could not wait to get back to California, only because California was now the closest thing to normalcy I had. Back in California, it took me a while to decompress and get back on a good routine again, and things were mostly normal for me up until December. I was hanging out at my friend's dorm, and a lot of us were just watching Netflix on the projector. We stayed pretty late, and I went back to my room around 2 a.m. And around 4 or 5, I woke up in the middle of the night and I was completely delusional. At this point, I was struggling to understand this new thing I was working on at the lab, but for some reason, I was dreaming that it was physically hurting me. I was still really out of it as I was trying to wake up and couldn't figure out if I was dreaming or not. A few minutes later, I'm fully awake and I realized I had this immense stabbing pain coming from my lower backside. I had no idea what to do, so I went to pee to see if there was any blood. I thought I ruptured an organ. It was hurting so bad. I looked in the mirror to see if there was any bleeding from that area. The pain was getting worse the more awake I was. It hurt to the point where I had to vomit, and even then it didn't help. I was panicking now. I couldn't stand up straight and it hurt to breathe. I hunched my way over to my friend's room where I was watching Netflix, and I woke them up, and I just remember telling them, I need help. They woke up very quickly and were trying to figure out what was going on. I had to vomit again once I got to their room. I told them I think I need to go to the hospital. They carried me down and walking was so painful. We got downstairs and I had to vomit a third time. They pulled the car around and we drove to the ER. I felt like I was going to pass out at this point. At the ER, I vomited a fourth time. It felt like forever to me, and I'm not sure how long everything took, but I finally was given some medicine to help with the pain. I was able to actually lie down at this point. The pain was there, but it's not too noticeable. We did some tests, but couldn't find anything. The doctors ruled it was a kidney stone. I was discharged that morning, and it took me about 2 weeks to recover, to be able to even sit without being in too much pain. To this day, I don't think I ever peed it out, but the pain isn't there anymore, and it slowly went away. When I was at the hospital, I wasn't sure if I had health insurance or if it had run out, so I didn't have anything to give them. The bill was on its way, and when I finally got it, I almost cried. $19,000. How on earth was I supposed to pay $19,000? The truth is, I wouldn't have been. I would have had to move back to my mom's and just work however long I needed to pay them back. I was still stubborn to the point though, where I still believed that California was the answer for me. One night at the gym, a guy I met from the first boot camp showed up. We got to talking and he told me he's not really doing software engineering anymore, but he's been working. I get the bright idea of asking him to see if they're hiring. Turns out they are. I got an interview almost immediately, and due to some things that were happening there, I started almost immediately too. Little did I know though, that this guy was going to be one of the best things to happen to me. We started working together and sharing stories and stuff, and I cannot stress enough that as much as I was going through, he was going through so much more. And this was the nicest, most loyal and strong-hearted dude I have ever met. Ever since we started working together, he's always had my back and I had his. We had good times and we had bad times, but no matter what, we always had each other's back and always rode out the bad times together. I love this guy and I'm happy to call him my brother. When I was trying to get all my paperwork in order for me to work, I ended up finding a health insurance card and I called to find out that it was still active. I called the hospital and got the bill squared right away. $19,000 cleared. It was such a relief. It was so hard for me to focus at school at this time because I was already believing that I had to move back. Fast forward a couple months and I've continued to work and study at the lab. And once again it hit me. I don't know when or what triggered it, but I could not sit in front of the computer to program anymore. I don't enjoy just sitting all day. I called some of my family just to talk about what's been going on. A lot of people who are close to me always mentioned how I should become a teacher, and I really thought about it. Maybe they're right. I mean, I do enjoy working with people, but maybe I just wasn't in the right environment. And honestly, that was all it took. At the end of October 2019, I was scheduled to pack up once again and move back to Massachusetts. I was working at a... I remember someone asked... They boarded the flight and I'm just hanging back at the airport. I remember someone asked me if I was going to do... if I was going to do right. Yeah. And I told myself to keep moving no matter what. I picked up another call. It's a weird paragraph. This went for a little while and I was constant... The first thing I found was... The first thing I found, yeah, which offered free housing if I get, everything, yeah. I called my girlfriend that night, yeah. I couldn't pull myself together to go to the boot camp for the rest of the month, but I felt what? I didn't write that. I was trying to schedule a meeting with my cousin on my father's side for me to keep up with them. Keep up? No, that's not the word. But I told them I was coming back and they actually made it work for me to... They made it... I only remember eating twice that week, and that was when I was with my father's side. My father's side of the... At this point, I was struggling. Back in excuse you. I had to vomit again once I got to the room. What the. They woke up very quickly. I had to vomit once again. That's the second time I mixed that up. They woke up. I don't want to do software engineering anymore. Again, I don't know. I don't know what even. I don't know what. I don't know what I'm trying to say either. I called some of my family just to talk. I called some of my family just to talk about what's been going on. A lot of. I called. I called some of my. At the end of October 2019, I was scheduled to pack up once again and move back to Massachusetts.